Greetings and salutations, folks. I hope everyone is still doing well. Welcome to today's bonus upload. Before we jump on into it, a couple quick links. As many of you may know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. These audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click that bell icon. And folks, please leave a comment and share the video. Why? Well, because all of these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. They definitely do matter, and they are appreciated. And with that, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to today's bonus, shall we? Today's first encounter, Atoka County, Oklahoma. I was playing with my brother on the creek when we heard the brush move. I looked up and it was standing there. I yelled to my brother, "What is that?" When he looked, it was gone. He didn't believe me when I said there was something tall, hairy, and reddish-brown standing there looking at us until a couple minutes later. The brush was moving again. We got really scared and decided to leave. As we were leaving on our four-wheelers, it ran out in front of us as we went home. It was tall, maybe 7 to 8 feet tall, reddish-brown hair, lots of hair, long arms and legs. I don't know what its face looked like. 3 days later, my neighbor saw it on our property across the road from her house, about 30 yards from her front porch. It scared her so bad she had to go to the hospital. Today's second encounter, Murray County, Oklahoma. After returning from a midnight hike, we pulled the truck into our camp spot. As my wife and friend of our son, 15-year-old, exited the truck on the driver's side, closest to the foot of the mountain we were camping at, something ran from our campsite and darted into the trees at the foot of the mountain. My son's friend told my wife that it was probably the kids that had TP'd us the night before when we were out on our midnight hike. However, they had left earlier that day. My wife and the boy then moved toward the mountain and heard something very large running bipedally and scale the mountain and run away from them. My wife immediately yelled my name. I had already exited the bed of the truck and started towards the camp. When I ran to the foot of the mountain and attempted to go up, the boy had also started to climb. It was impossible. It was almost straight up, and the only way we could scale that mountain was by slowly pulling ourselves by the limbs of the trees. My wife and the boy stated that whatever they saw was extremely fast and scaled the mountainside like it was nothing. When I suggested to my wife that it could have possibly been a bobcat or a coon, she said no way. The figure was too big and sounded like it was only on 2 feet. Today's third encounter. First and foremost, I have to say I don't care if anybody believes this or not. This is not a campfire tale, but a true story based on 2 encounters I have had during my life with the creature known as the Dogman. I won't disclose the location, but I will say I lived in the middle of Tennessee since I was born in 1986. I've heard thousands of different stories and lore about the land that we lived on and the surrounding areas. Ever since I can remember, I've been roaming and exploring the woods that surrounded our property since I was 8 years old, and I've only had 2 encounters with this creature. Once when I was 14, and this year at 34. During my first encounter, I was walking with a friend. We'll refer to him as Ronnie. Ronnie was 3 years older than me at the time. I was 14 and he was 17. We knew the woods surrounding my property like the back of our hands. We had been squirrel hunting for many years back there, along with just roaming and exploring. Ronnie had been telling me stories about demon deer. I figured that he was just attempting to scare me while we were in the deep woods. Coincidentally enough, when the wind stopped blowing, we noticed that there were no noises, no insects chirping, no birds tweeting, squirrels barking, just dead, eerie silence. In all my experiences in the woods, this gave me the sense that we were close to a big predator. Honestly, the biggest game that could have possibly been in that area was a big-ass white-tailed buck. I mean, maybe a black bear, but those are way more common in eastern Tennessee. There was an instant when Ronnie and I heard what sounded like a woman screaming or being murdered, which we later wrote off to maybe a bobcat or something. We both started looking around to get some sort of sense of the surrounding environment. After a few moments of no wind or noise, the tops of the trees west to our location started swaying. As we listened, we could hear this cooish, cooish, cooish every time this thing jumped from one tree to another. The trees were swinging, groaning, popping under the momentum of this thing's weight as it launched itself from one to another. To be honest, I have no clue what the intentions of this thing was. I'm not sure it was trying to intimidate us, get our attention, or maybe just get a closer look at us. But Ronnie and I were not waiting around for this thing to jump to the tree above our heads, so we sprinted out of the thicker brush, stumbling onto an old logging trail. We could hear this thing following us by the sounds of the trees again snapping and popping, as this thing was now swinging on the trees that were literally 20 feet away. We were so terrified because there shouldn't have been nothing in those woods with the ability to swing and launch itself from tree to tree moving like that. At the time, I hadn't even gotten a glimpse of whatever was swinging on top of the trees and sounded like a 600-pound wood-roaming gorilla. We didn't stop to look, we just ran. We bolted down the old logging road all the way back to the road and down Ronnie's dad's driveway into his house. We never spoke a word of it to anyone. Hell, we didn't even see it. What did we say? Fast forward 20 years. I'm now 34 instead of 14. Up until this second encounter, I've not known what it was that scared the holy fuck out of Ronnie and I that day in the woods 20 years ago. Current date was August 14th, 2020. I'd been chilling in the backyard, smoking some killer pot and burning this godforsaken pecan wood that barely burns unless you have a very hot fire already going. The fire pit sits about 15 feet from the edge of the tree line. Now I know what you're thinking. Oh man, you were smoking pot. You probably hallucinated this. I've never hallucinated while smoking marijuana, and I'm a psychedelic advocate. I've dropped LSD numerous times along with smoked 5-MeO-DMT and NN-DMT, and never while on psychedelics have I ever seen anything even close to this. As I'm relaxing by this fire out back, I heard a loud pop. I instantly snapped my head up and looked in the direction that branch breaking noise came from, and that was the instant I first laid my eyes on the thing. I blinked 2 or 3 times to actually make sure I was actually seeing this thing. Standing at the tree line 15 feet from my fire was this gigantic black outline of what looked like a wolf standing on its hind legs. I was shocked at the sighting, but I noticed very fast that I didn't feel afraid. I did not feel negative energy coming off of it, what I can only describe as literally 8-foot tall walking wolf. I didn't feel the sense of evil everyone talks about. I actually felt relaxed and at peace with him being so close to me. As I looked closer, I noticed that its hair was very well maintained. I didn't smell any obnoxious odors and smells of decay and death, as many others describe. This thing looked civilized, tamed, intelligent, advanced. Hell, I'd even say the thing looked enlightened with a knowledge I was totally unaware of.
Its eyes were not an amber, as other encounters describe. This creature's eyes were fluorescent blue, mesmerizing to be quite honest. As I looked, I noticed it had 3 braids in its hair on the side of its head. It reminded me of a Native American style of braid because of the turquoise thread that was laced in between its hair and the braid itself. It looked like this thing was very well taken care of. That's why I say it looked advanced, or maybe even just in tune with its environment. After a few moments staring, it took off faster than I'd ever seen anything before, and almost unnatural on 2 legs, but, at the time, so fluid and effortlessly. I feel like this was the creature that Ronnie and I encountered that day in the woods 20 years ago. I think it was just curious with us. It didn't give off any vibes of harm or danger, just curiosity, maybe bewilderment. I've looked at the woods and the world, for the matter of very difference, since August of this year. Today's 4th encounter, Murray County, Oklahoma. A friend and I were hiking near the Turner Falls area of Oklahoma on July 10th. We ventured off a bit into the mountains there to get away from the tourists swimming in the pool. As we began climbing the mountain, we started to notice a foul smell. It smelled like old, crusty, dried-up urine mixed with rotting wood and musk. It's kind of hard to explain, but the odor was bad enough that we made several comments as we climbed as to how it was making us gag. However, the smell would come and go. It was not constant, which we found a bit peculiar. However, we really didn't think anything of it, because although we were in a pretty remote part of the park, we thought it was probably just from the campers or other hikers. At one point near the top, we stopped to rest and test our blood sugars. We're both diabetics, and the smell blew in again. We started to look around to see what could be causing it. I spotted a tree, a type of pine that at about 6.5 feet up had been twisted completely around and snapped down. I immediately pointed it out to my friend, who is quite a Bigfoot enthusiast. And we began discussing that because of the thickness of the tree, the height at which it was twisted, and our remote location, we didn't believe that it had been done by some hiker. For one, I don't know anybody strong enough to do that. Also, we noted it wasn't the wind that could have done it, because it looked somewhat fresh, and the trees surrounding it were fine, as were their branches, and there was no wind that day. As we began to look around, we spotted several more branches, both thick and thin, that looked the same, twisted and snapped down. Hikers could have done some of them, but I suppose the majority of them were on branches or trees too thick for something without very large hands and powerful strength to break. Interestingly enough, the first break I noticed looked almost identical to the picture of a twisted tree on a website I had seen. My friend then looked to our left, down a bit from us, and said, "Hey, look at that." There we saw several large branches that had been twisted and pulled down, though still connected to the tree, and laid almost on top of each other with mud and smaller sticks caked into it. This looked very similar to a nest we have seen on websites. In fact, when we returned later that night to her house in McKinley, I got on the internet and pulled up pictures of twisted trees and nests to show her. Her response was, "That's it, that's what we saw." After seeing all this, we began to feel a little out of place. We got really quiet and a little scared. At this point, the smell blew in again, and suddenly it hit me. This could be a Bigfoot or something else. The thought had honestly never crossed my mind before we saw the tree breaks. So, tired and pretty freaked out, we left the mountain and began to hike down where the people were. I did, however, take pictures of the tree break and nests. Unfortunately, leaving my camera in the car for a couple of days in intense heat, the film got warped and many of the pictures didn't come out. Not hearing any noises or seeing anything, and understanding that while we were off the beaten path, we were still in an area that was heavily foot trafficked. I have not ruled out the possibility that the culprits were campers at all. However, due to the remarkable similarities in what we saw to what's on the internet, the fact that we were in a heavy forested area with low human population, and in an area surrounded by water, semi-mountainous, the smell, which smelled almost exactly like every description I have ever heard them smelling like, and hearing that Bigfoot was kind of infatuated with campers, especially their food. I cannot rule out the possibility that we may have stumbled onto a habitat of a Sasquatch. I'm not crazy, nor is this a joke. I am also never quick to jump to conclusions about tree breaks, but this one truly got my attention. Today's fifth encounter. So I really don't believe in myths or legends or stuff like that, but something I recently witnessed really made me doubt that. I don't know if I'm just being paranoid, but I might have had a very close encounter with something that was most definitely not human and scared me out of my mind. Basically, last night I decided to go hang out with a close friend and skateboard around a bit. Met up with some other friends from school down by the grocery store. We decided to hang out for a bit, walk around, and they told my friend and I that they needed to start walking home and they wanted to show us some apparently cool, sketchy treehouse where people always go to hang out and do drugs and whatnot on the way. We started walking that way, mostly through just suburban neighborhoods, and at that point it's almost completely dark outside. There were around 7 of us at first, and people mostly started heading out until it was just said friend and I and a girl who agreed to take us to see the treehouse, since it was fairly close to her house. So we get there and take this pretty open path to a chain-link fence with a hole in it. We go through using our phones as flashlights, and not far after there's another chain-link fence with a hole in it, with the treehouse right behind it, surrounded by small bush and forest. We're pretty scared at this point since it's dark, and all that, so the friend and the girl stay behind the fence while I go through the hole just outside. After looking at the treehouse for a few seconds, we start hearing rustling in the bushes. But although scared, dismiss it as a small animal or maybe even one of our friends just messing with us, since it's pretty close to several houses. Like an idiot, I keep standing outside the small hole in the fence, not moving, while the rustling keeps moving around. We called out several times to no response, and the thing, whatever it was, kept moving around in the bushes a little bit, rustling every few seconds. I tried looking and could barely see it, but guessed that it was around half my height. It keeps moving, and after a bit, we realized from the foot patterns that it started to walk on 2 legs. This just about does it for us, and we get out of there looking behind us every couple of seconds. On our way back, said friend told me earlier by the treehouse he had caught a glimpse of something moving, whitish gray color, a bit bigger than a large dog. I visited this treehouse again today with a couple more friends and actually went up to it this time, but sadly didn't see or hear anything. And yes, I know I'd be an idiot to die in a horror movie. Today's 6th encounter. As a young girl, my sweet old great-great-granny Lee from Homer, Louisiana used to tell me about the Wolfman of Marshall, Texas. She said she had seen the beast herself as it attacked a neighbor's pig. She swore on the old family Bible that what she saw was not man or known beast. She said it was a man-wolf that could be nothing more than that. This beast man-wolf, my dear old Granny Lee often described as people actually seeing what was half human, half wolf. It has been told that they are over 6 feet tall when they stand. They have large, yellow-orange eyes and long, white, sharp teeth, and a blunt, long snout. His face is always not quite a man's, but not quite a wolf, though some report they are covered with a full coat of hair, and others say that coat is sparsely and patchy. Though reports sometimes differ, the common factors are that werewolf's face was always seemingly flat, blunt, and yet pointed and very grotesque long. The wolf-man of not so long ago was often encountered by a stagecoach road. This, of course, is one of the most haunted spots of Marshall, Texas. Others say it's a dead woman's road, or Seedberry Street, as it is now known. This werebeast animal, or as some call it, a dogman, is known to slay sheep or cow, where it stood in a blink of an eye. They say thousands of chickens they have killed could feed the whole state of Texas in a year. And don't forget the many stories of them killing possibly man, woman, children, or two for a good measure. The old stories around here you will hear most often is poor Miss Ethel Briggs. She was a lonely, widowed woman whose husband and young son were reportedly outright killed by the man-wolf. Ethel's husband used to raise all the normal things it took to survive the daily life of the time. Then one day, he found where something had broke into many chicken pens and killed his livestock and carried them away. He then found chewed up pieces showing real signs that they had been killed and eaten. He set out traps to kill what he thought was a large coyote, or possibly a mountain lion. Ethel's husband knew what he had to do, so he went out at night, as the story goes, never returned. They found his foot and his toes chewed off the next morning, lying by the front door, and found his left arm missing 3 fingers and half a thumb near the old barn. His head was by the creek, missing its nose, ears, and tongue, and of course his lips were chewed off, and the area of his cheeks showed deep, large punctures and tooth gouge marks. The very next night, her youngest boy was taken before her eyes. He was a red-headed one who set off looking for his mother for the rest of his dad's chewed-up remains to bury on a cold February day. The very next morning he was found, at least a large part of his upper torso, just near 5 miles away, and the sheriff was called in to come and investigate the death. Poor Miss Ethel said that she had seen the beast when the town sheriff came to call, and that she had buried only the 3 large pieces of her husband's carcass behind the great field he used to till. And she went on to say that she and her 4 other kids had found them scattered around the property. She said what she saw was not that of a man, or just a mangy, rabies-infected dog. It was more than just a very large. It walked like a man with a strange apparent slight limp or a jake leg. She also stated that it noted ran off on all 4s with her husband's left leg in its mouth. Today's 7th encounter. I was out camping with some friends in Blood Mountain, which is up in north part of Georgia, along the Appalachian Trail. I was 20 years at the time, and will go on record to say that I was not drinking. We had a bonfire, and we were pretty mellow. We weren't whooping and howling. We were mostly just hanging out telling stories from the week and whatnot. We heard something over on what we would call the right side, towards the denser part of the woods. We were only about 5 minutes off the main trail, so we weren't terribly far. It had only taken us about a day to get there. We heard something pretty big. Most of us were hunters that were there. We could pretty much distinguish between squirrels, bears, deer, so we heard something really big, and we assumed it was a bear. Like any good red-blooded American, we got our guns, And just to make sure, because you don't shoot unless you see it, we got our lights and walked out there to see what it was. A lot of the girls were just making high-pitched squeaking noises because they were frightened versus me and the guys who went out there and thought it was probably nothing, and we had scared it off. Right in the tree line, our lights kept catching something big and reflective that was probably about 6 feet tall or taller. If it was standing just behind a tree, its eyes were about 6 feet off the ground, which is what made us think it wasn't a bear, because bears aren't typically that tall in the area we were at. We'll get black bears and maybe an occasional small brown bear that wanders that far down, but black bears are more common. They only stand around 4 to 5 feet tall. So we shot at it. Me and this guy named Wolf. That's his legal name. He and I were the two closest, and we shot. We were the ones closest to it, and either his or my shot landed it. There was a lot of noise from the guns, so it was hard to tell what the creatures sound like. It wasn't a movie gorilla noise. It was like a real gorilla, but much deeper, which again, there was a lot of gun firing and stuff, so that's the best I could describe it from memory. We didn't see it anymore, so we went to investigate the area, because if it's down, then obviously we needed to do something about the body. Bodies left in the woods are not good, typically. Or we needed to hide the evidence if it was a bear. We didn't see anything, aside from the large indentations in the leaves, as if something large had been standing there. And puddled blood in the leaves, along with some trees moving away from the camp. We saw broken branches as high about 6 feet. That's how the story is, how I shot Bigfoot. All of the guys and myself had a gun. I had a Colt 45, my friend had a Magnum. So he had a big gun. We're assuming that's what got whatever we shot. She explained that they were about 30 feet away before opening fire, but it was difficult to see what happened after shooting started because of the commotion and the muzzle flare. I didn't see it turn around. I just knew that whatever was reflecting the light, the creature's eyes, was there, then it wasn't. And then, when we went to investigate, we found physical evidence of it running away, and there were other limbs further on that were the same height and lower that were broken. I didn't see any fur. I just saw the eyes, then the blood. She described the creature's eyes as being reddish-orange. The impressions left on the forest floor were definitely wider than your standard 8.5 by 11 book, and at least twice as long as a bear's foot. The leaves were really dense through there, so even if we had a plaster of Paris or something like that, we wouldn't have been able to make a cast. Everyone agreed it wasn't a bear, but we didn't tell the girls. The girls were really jumpy at little noises following the encounter, and the forest remained eerily silent. At that time we talked about how quiet it was. Today's 8th encounter. It was November 2019. I'd went hunting with my family. We have a pretty large farm. I'd love to share where, but I've been stalked before, and that's a fear of mine. Anyway, we set out around 5 in the morning, but that's really not important. Later that day, finally my cousin had shot one, a medium-sized buck, 4-pointer. It was growing dark as we got the buck into the garage to prepare. Anyway, as we're skinning the deer, the forest grew eerily silent. The only sound was light footsteps in the forest and coyotes howling. By that time we finished skinning the deer, it was pitch black. Just as we were about to leave the garage and go eat dinner, the door got stuck. My uncle was relatively mad and fought with it. He couldn't get the garage door all the way closed, but gave up. So we went out and ate and then off to bed. I couldn't sleep. Something kept me up. I had the best bed, warm temperatures, everything was perfect, but I couldn't sleep. My window was opened, and I was hearing crunches outside. Now keep in mind, this is about 1 in the morning. I tossed and turned, but nothing. Then the tapping and scratching started on my screen window. I was horrified. I grabbed my phone and shined the flashlight over to the screen. What I saw horrified me. It was the deer we had just skinned earlier. Not, I forgot to mention, but this deer had a huge dent in its skull. We had no idea why. But on this imposter, the same dent was in the same place. I was slightly alarmed at the sight, and then I remembered my window was 6 feet off the ground. I froze in fear. The thing let out this low growl and stared at me. I tried to ignore it, but fear overwhelmed me and I fainted. I woke up in the morning and ran to the garage. The skin was gone. The only thing left was a pool of blood. The deer was still hanging there fine. I ran over to my window. Prints. There were prints. Not even deer print. They looked like footprints mixed with deer hooves. Some type of deep indentation that could have been a claw mark. Sorry for the long story, but I tried to get as much detail as I could. Update. So around 2 today, my cousin and I were working on a blind for hunting season. She climbed the fence to go to what we call the dark woods. I was watching her, making sure nothing attacked her, because there are a ton of bear up here in the mountain. Anyway, so we hear like a really loud smacking on some trees. I can tell it's not gunshots because we had both have a very different sound. Then we started smelling something like rotten meat. Then I noticed my cousin freezes. She says, "Come here now." So I jump off a little mound and slid under the barbed wire. I ran over to her and then I saw it. It was like a large, shadowy deer. It had like really unnatural horns. They were pointed, sharp, and crooked. Its skin jagged off its bones. Then it was standing upright. It stood up and ran toward us. We took off up the hill. Looks like I'm hunting in the cabins this season. Update. So I haven't been very active because I've been really busy, but here's a story that happened not long ago to me and some of my friends. So we were just sitting in the woods. It's about 8:30 in the evening. It was me, Ellis, Elizabeth, and Pierre. I have permission for the names. It was about 9 when the event started happening. First, 2 large doe ran full speed past us. After this, the woods were completely silent. I began to kind of worry because this is a sign. I sat still looking around when I saw this very tall shape along the tree line. It was around 500 feet away. I could vaguely see the antlers on this thing. It must have been 7 feet tall. After this, there was a terrifying screech from that direction. It bent over and ran. We all saw it and ran out of those woods. They were still silent.
And there you have it, folks. I hope you all enjoyed today's bonus as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd like to thank you all for supporting this channel. After all, it is your support that helps the channel to continue to grow and go, and what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone is simply treated with the respect that we deserve. Please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and our friends. These creatures are real. These events have happened. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless you all.